Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the Tuesday episode of Talk Sports with your host, Alec Pecano. Let's get right into it. My performance of the night from Monday is Luis Arraez, second baseman from the Marlins. He went 5 for 5 with 1 run scored and 2 runs batted in an 11-0 win for the Marlins over the Blue Jays. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the Cincinnati Reds and their unexpectedly good start in the winning streak they're on. The Reds have been surprising since they called up a few of their top prospects, like Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McLean, and they just got Joey Votto back. They're actually in first place. As of recording this, they're in first place in the National League Central. The next topic I'm going to talk about tonight is 3 trade candidates in Major League Baseball. I'm going to go from 3, which is the least likely, to 1, which is probably the most likely. Number 3 is Alexis Diaz, the closer for the Cincinnati Reds. The reason I put him at number 3 is because unless the Reds fall out of contention, I don't see an avenue where they trade him. Maybe if they fall out of contention by early July, they think about maybe trading him and seeing if they can get prospects back for him. Or if they're still competing, they're gonna probably buy at the deadline and try to add more pieces and see if they can win the division. The next guy I have is Tim Anderson, shortstop for the White Sox. I have him at number 2 because with the next 2 guys, they could get traded. Anderson, he could get traded. It just depends on where the White Sox are at the trade deadline. If they're competing in the American League Central and within, I'm going to say, 3 games of first place, then you might see the White Sox hold on to Tim Anderson and keep him. If they're out of contention and they want to get something for Anderson, then they might trade him and see what the package they could get back for him is. And I got 3 teams I think that could trade for him. One being the Miami Marlins. They need a shortstop bad. They've been playing Joey Wendell at short or Jacob Amaya, or from time to time, Gene Segura. And those guys are serviceable, other than Amaya, who's young and he's a prospect. So I could see the Marlins trading for him and giving up a package around maybe Sixto Sanchez and one of their other highly priced prospects. And the next guy I'm going to talk about is Shane Bieber, a pitcher from the Guardians. Trade rumors have already started on him, and I can see an avenue where he does get traded. It's just a question of what's the asking price going to be, how much are you going to have to give up to try to get him, and are you willing? I'm going to say, if I had to guess, the asking price is probably going to be one of your top three to 5 prospects and a player that can help the Guardians compete right now. But again, like I said with Tim Anderson, it's a different situation with Bieber because he's a free agent I think he has a mutual option in his contract with the Guardians at the end of the year that he could pick up and they could bring him back. But I can see that happening. But at the same time, I can also see them saying, you know what? It's time to go into a small rebuild. Let's trade him and see what kind of haul we can get back. And that way we can maybe retool our farm system. But again, like I said with the Guardians, I think if they're in contention, they don't trade him. They keep him till the end of the season, and they probably lose him for nothing. Because if they're competing, there's no way they trade him. The next topic I'm going to hit on today is what I would do if I was the GM / owner of the Rays. The number one thing I would do is call up top prospect Kyle Manzardo and Curtis Mead. They're both infielders. Don't get me wrong. I like Isaac Paredes and I like Yandy Diaz, but I mean, Paredes is still pretty young. He's only 24, but Yandy's getting up there in age. He's, I think, 30 or 31, and we've seen what happens when a guy turns 30. Not trying to sound mean to Tigers fans, because I know y'all know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Miguel Cabrera. But Yandy, if you call it Manzardo, you can keep Yandy at first base. The only reason I'm saying call up Manzardo as my number one thing I would do as a Rays GM is because I think it would be beneficial for him to you play him half the time at first base, and then the rest of the time you could play him at DH and at least let him get reps in the big leagues to see if he's ready. Now, the number two thing I would do, and this hurts me, is I would designate for assignment Josh Fleming. And the reason I would do it is because he's a good pitcher. He's not a good starter. He's better coming out of the bullpen behind an opener. And you can't have that when you have a team that's trying to compete for a championship like the Rays are. And it doesn't make sense to keep him. I would DFA him and see what you can get, because you got other guys in the minor league system that could come up and help out the Rays. And the last thing I would do if I was the Rays GM is I would call up outfielder Cameron Misner and have him split time in right field and do a platoon with Josh Lowe, Manuel Margot, with the two of them, and you play the hot hand. Whoever's hitting well at that point plays. The other one can DH, or they can split time all three of them in the outfield. And then from time to time, Luke Raley too. But I didn't put this one on here, but the other thing I would do if I was the Rays GM is if I was the owner of the Rays, this is the number one thing I would do, is I would move them to downtown Tampa and put them in Ybor City and build a stadium like the Braves did with Truist Park. And I would have like the Braves have with the Battery. I would have that in Ybor with the Rays, with their stadium. Make it a translucent roof and make it around 40 to 45,000 seats. And That's what I would do if I was the owner / GM of the Rays. And the last topic I'm going to touch on tonight is I'm going to give you 2 college football hot takes that I think are going to happen. Here they are. 2 college football hot takes. Here they are. Number 1, I think Tennessee, and this is going to shock a lot of people, I think Tennessee will win the SEC this year. Yes, I know people are going to say, oh, no, they're not. It's going to be Georgia. It's going to be Georgia. Georgia's lost a lot over the last 2 years. And my explanation as to why I think it's going to be Tennessee is I know they lost 2 good receivers and their QB, but Joe Milton is a really good quarterback. He never got a chance at Michigan. Never got a chance to actually play because he was stuck behind Cade McNamara and a couple other guys. And I think he has a good year this year, and then he might finish in my top 3 for the preseason Heisman. You'll see that in another video. And then the last hot take I have, the number 2 hot take, is I think Marvin Harrisonjr, wide receiver for Ohio State, wins the Heisman this year. And here's why. First bullet point is the reason I think he wins is because you saw what he did last year as the alpha receiver for Ohio State. He went off. And now with Jackson Smith and Jigba not at Ohio State anymore, and Marvin Harrison Jr. being the clear number 1 receiver. I know Ibuka's still there. I know Julian Fleming's still there. I know you got a couple freshmen that came in that everybody's raving about. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to go off this year because he's got his high school Kyle McCord. I'm going to say now, I think Kyle McCord is going to be the starter for Ohio State this year. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. goes off and wins the Heisman over my other 2 guys that I will talk about in another hot take in another video. And thank you for attending the show today. Please subscribe and like the video. I'd really appreciate it. And please share my YouTube page, my YouTube channel with your friends and other YouTubers. Thank you. Have a great night.